You did not arrive here by chance. The psyche never moves randomly. Something deep within you, ancient, intuitive, and quietly relentless, has been pressing against the walls of your identity, asking you to question the mask you wear and the smiles you've offered like sacred offerings at an altar that has never truly blessed you. So let me ask you gently but truthfully. What becomes of the empath when they no longer kneel before the comfort of others? When the empath finally stops pleasing everyone, something profound begins to stir within them, the awakening of the archetype that lies beneath the persona. It is not the polite, well-adjusted mask shaped by childhood conditioning and the need to belong, but the forgotten core of the self, the unfiltered soul that has always waited beneath the noise of adaptation. You see, the empath is rarely born. They are forged, formed not from pure light, but from necessity. A necessity to survive in an environment where sensing others was safer than sensing oneself. This is the first crack in the empath's illusion, realizing that their extraordinary sensitivity was never a divine gift freely given, but an unconscious survival spell cast in response to danger. A child does not become empathic because the world cherishes their essence, but because they learned early that intuition could protect them. They began to read faces, voices, and silences as if their safety depended on it, because it did. So what the world later praises in the empath, compassion, patience, and intuition, is often only the visible residue of an invisible wound. That wound has a name, the wound of self-erasure. For years, perhaps decades, the empath walks through life like a mirror without a frame, reflecting, absorbing, and bending light for everyone else while forgetting their own. They become fluent in the unspoken language of tension, the tremor in a voice, the shift in a room's energy, long before a word is uttered. They smile, they soothe, they serve, hoping that love will stay if they keep giving enough of themselves away. But love, true love, cannot be earned through sacrifice. And it is in that moment, when the empath finally sees this truth, that something ancient within them begins to rise from the deep. It begins so subtly that you might almost miss it. A quiet discomfort when you say yes once more, even as every part of you whispers no. A deep exhaustion that no amount of rest can cure. A strange ache of betrayal, though no one has wronged you but yourself. This is how the awakening begins for the empath, softly, invisibly, in the ordinary moments of self-abandonment that have become habit. At first it feels like nothing more than fatigue, but beneath the surface, the psyche is stirring. The soul, weary of its own disguise, begins to whisper through symptoms the mind can no longer ignore. And when the waking hours fail to listen, the dreams begin. In the darkness of sleep, the unconscious paints its truth in symbols. You see yourself drowning in water, gasping for air in a flood of others' emotions. You run through collapsing houses, the foundations of your false self crumbling beneath your feet. You are chased by faceless crowds, haunted by the countless roles and identities you've worn to keep others comfortable. These are not random dreams. They are messages from the depths of your being. The house is the persona, the structure built from adaptation and approval. The drowning is the erosion of your boundaries. The faceless crowd represents every version of you that performed love to avoid rejection. The unconscious does not speak in logic, it speaks in imagery, because the soul awakens not through explanation, but through recognition. And so the empath begins to question, who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when I am no longer needed? What remains when I stop giving? The silence that follows is deafening. It feels like falling into an empty void, a hollow echo where the old self used to live. The pain that emerges here is not just emotional, it is existential. When your worth has been built upon meeting everyone else's needs, the absence of that transaction feels like a small death. And in truth, it is the death of the false self, the ego that believed love must always be earned through sacrifice. But hidden within this death lies an ancient secret. The void you fear is not a grave, it is a womb. It is not the end of you, but the alchemical beginning of a truer existence. The darkness that envelops you now is the sacred space of transformation, where everything that is not you begins to fall away. What feels like breaking is, in reality, the cracking open of your inner shell. The empath is not being destroyed. They are being reassembled, reborn through truth. And what emerges from this sacred undoing is not the well-trained pleaser, nor the mask society applauded, but the primordial self that existed long before the need to be needed. This is where healing begins, not in becoming more, but in finally daring to be. The awakening does not arrive with peace or light. It begins with rage. Not the polished kind disguised as calm understanding, but raw, unfiltered, holy rage. For when the empath finally stops pleasing everyone, the veil falls and the truth is blinding. You begin to see how your tenderness was used as a tool, how your silence was mistaken for consent, how your endless presence became a convenience for others, while your needs dissolved into invisibility. You see it not with clinical detachment, but through the burning eyes of a soul that has reached its threshold. This is not madness, this is clarity. The rage that rises is not a flaw in your character, it is the fire of rebirth, the ancient instinct of your psyche reclaiming its voice after years of suppression. Do not run from this anger. It is not poison, it is medicine. It is the sacred flame that severs the cords of codependency and burns through the lies you once called harmony. This rage is not destruction for its own sake. It is the voice within that finally says, "No more." It is the archetype of the warrior awakening in the empath's heart, the part of you that defends what is sacred, that refuses to be erased again. And yes, it is frightening. For someone who has built their entire identity around maintaining peace, setting boundaries can feel like violence. Saying no can feel cruel. But it is not cruelty. It is protection. And protection, when rooted in love, is the highest form of compassion you can offer yourself. This is the moment when the empath meets their shadow face to face. For years, they have exiled their anger, condemned their selfishness, and silenced the part of them that longed to take up space. Those energies were buried alive, projected onto others, labeled as shameful or unspiritual. But now, as the pleasing ends, the shadow returns, not to destroy, but to integrate. It whispers from the depths, "I am your unmet need. I am your silent scream. I am your stolen boundaries, and I have been waiting for you." The shadow does not come as an enemy. It comes as a mirror, reflecting the power you once disowned. Do not fear this reunion. Fear instead the life you lived without it, the life where your kindness was self-betrayal, where your light dimmed to make others comfortable. For only by embracing your shadow can you step into true wholeness. Anger, once transformed, becomes strength. Boundaries become clarity. And from the ashes of compliance, a new kind of love rises, one that no longer asks permission to exist. The empath's true journey is not only one of compassion, but of reclamation. a sacred calling to gather back every fragment of the soul once sacrificed at the altar of approval. Every moment they said yes while their heart screamed no. Every time they swallowed their pain to protect another's comfort. Every time they made themselves small so someone else could feel significant. These moments, seemingly harmless at the time, were quiet acts of self-abandonment. Each one was a soul fragment offered up in the desperate hope of being loved. And now, each must be called home. This is not a quick return. It is neither neat nor linear. It is a spiral, a descent, and rising again, and again. As the empath begins this reclamation, grief becomes their silent companion. They mourn not only the people they've lost, but the illusions they once called love. They realize that many relationships were built upon performance, not authenticity, that the warmth they once felt was conditional, tethered to their ability to keep others comfortable. They begin to see how much of their belonging was earned through self-erasure, and this recognition cuts deep. Friendships once cherished begin to fade. Familiar circles start to dissolve. The empath feels a profound loneliness, not because they are unloved, but because they have outgrown the roles that once surrounded them. And yet, hidden within this loneliness is an unexpected peace. For the first time, the empath no longer rushes to fix, to heal, to absorb what is not theirs. They stop chasing emotional fires to extinguish. They simply sit, they weep, they breathe. And in the quiet, something miraculous happens. A faint voice begins to rise from within, the voice they silenced long ago. It trembles at first, uncertain, like a child not spoken to in decades. But slowly, it grows stronger. It begins to say things the empath has forgotten how to say. I am tired. I don't want this. I need. I matter. This is the return of the self, the long-lost center reclaiming its throne. The empath begins to see not only the wounds of others, but their own sacred boundaries, their own unmet needs, their own worth. What once felt like loneliness transforms into solitude, a quiet temple where their true voice can finally breathe again. In that stillness, they realize that the love they have been seeking from others was never lost. It was waiting within them all along, behind every yes they never wanted to give. This is not the end of their compassion. It is the beginning of their truth, the moment the empath stops seeing through the eyes of survival and starts seeing through the eyes of the soul. They look into the mirror and finally see the cost of always being kind. The smile that once held everyone together now trembles beneath the weight of exhaustion. They notice the tightness in their chest, the heaviness in their gut, the tears pressing behind tired eyes. For the first time, they feel not only for others, but for themselves. This is the threshold, the sacred turning point. When the empath stops pleasing everyone, they do not become selfish, they become sovereign. And sovereignty is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the quiet knowing of where you end and another begins. It is learning to be generous without depletion, compassionate without collapse, loving without erasing yourself. Sovereignty is given from overflow, not from emptiness. It is the moment you decide you will no longer serve as an emotional landfill for the world's pain. At this stage, something profound begins to shift. The empath's energy changes, and with that change, the people and patterns around them begin to fall away. Those who once fed on their endless compassion, the narcissists, the emotional manipulators, the chronic victims, can no longer find nourishment in their presence. The empath no longer vibrates at the frequency of martyrdom. They no longer attract those who need a savior. And though this shedding is painful, it is sacred. It is the burning away of the false to make space for the true. Every ending is a purification, Every goodbye is a quiet initiation into authenticity. But this new path is not without challenge. The old self whispers softly in moments of weakness. Maybe just one more time, maybe I should help again. The impulse to please, to rescue, to prove worthiness through service does not vanish overnight. It lingers, seductive and familiar. The archetype of the wounded healer beckons, offering identity, purpose, and praise. And so, the empath must become something greater than a healer. They must become a mystic, a watcher of their own soul, a guardian of their own energy. Each day becomes a spiritual practice of self-inquiry. Am I giving from love or from lack? Am I serving from joy or from guilt? Am I being seen or merely used? These are not selfish questions. They are sacred boundaries, acts of devotion to the soul, for the world does not need more burned-out empaths who confuse sacrifice with love. It needs awakened ones, whole, vibrant, rooted beings who can say yes with joy and no without guilt. It needs those who can love without losing themselves, who can feel deeply without being consumed by every emotion that passes through them. Your sensitivity is not your identity, it is your instrument. And like any sacred instrument, it must be tuned, protected, and honored. You are not here to carry the world's pain. You are here to feel it, to learn from it, and to choose what is truly yours to hold. You are not meant to disappear for others' comfort. You are here to shine so completely in your truth that your very presence helps others remember their own. When the empath stops pleasing and begins truly seeing, something miraculous happens. They do not merely change, they transmute, they become medicine. And once you have tasted the medicine of truth, you can never return to ignorance. The veil that once shielded your awareness from the reality of who you are has been torn open. Once the psychic eye has glimpsed its own reflection in the mirror of darkness, it cannot close again. You are now initiated into a sacred tension, the space between who you once were and who you are becoming. This is the liminal passage, the corridor of the soul between the house of false belonging and the temple of authentic being. It feels unsettling because the old identities no longer fit, yet the new ones have not yet taken form. You no longer wish to be the silent comforter, but your voice still trembles as you begin to speak your truth. This is the stage the ancient alchemists called nigredo, the blackening, the decomposition of the false self, so that the soul may be reborn in wholeness. Do not mistake this disorientation for failure. It is the very heart of transformation. During this stage, the unconscious begins to communicate with striking intensity. Dreams become vivid and haunting. You might see walls collapsing, hands bleeding, serpents shedding their skin. These are not random images. They are sacred instructions. The crumbling walls signify the dissolution of your false identity. The bleeding hands represent the pain of surrendering control. The serpent, ageless and wise, embodies transmutation, the old self dying so the true self can emerge. You are being reborn through the death of illusion, yet the path is not without trials. The archetype of the pleaser does not vanish quietly. It returns with seductive whispers that sound noble. Be kind even if it hurts. Don't be selfish. Keep the peace. But these are not virtues. They are traps forged by the unconscious to keep you bound to the old cycle of self-abandonment. Each time you silence your truth for someone else's comfort, you sacrifice yourself at the altar of their expectations. And the price of this offering is not only psychological but energetic. The body, that silent witness to all your betrayals, begins to protest. Anxiety becomes constant. Fatigue grows heavy. Your breath shortens, your digestion falters, your skin flares. These are not random ailments. They are messages. Your nervous system is weary from over-attunement to everyone but you. Your immune system weakens from carrying emotions that were never yours. The body becomes the voice of the soul, crying out for balance. But as you stop this cycle, something remarkable happens. The body begins to heal. Slowly, your breath deepens, the jaw unclenches, the spine straightens. You begin to inhabit your body again, as though returning to a sacred temple long abandoned. You eat with presence. You speak the truth. You walk into rooms not to be liked, but to be real. And this authenticity unsettles those who once benefited from your compliance. People may accuse you of being distant, cold, or selfish. But do not mistake their discomfort for your wrongdoing. You are no longer their projection screen, the one they use to cast their wounds and fantasies upon. You are simply standing in your own light. Remember, you are not responsible for how others react to your boundaries. You are responsible only for your integrity. This is the true depth of transformation, not merely in setting boundaries, but in holding them with compassion and unwavering presence, even when guilt or manipulation arises. For it is here, in this sacred tension between truth and love, that the empath becomes whole. Within every empath lives a forgotten figure, the wild self. This is not the soft, endlessly giving version the world has come to expect. It is the untamed, unapologetic, fully embodied essence that existed before conditioning, before guilt was taught, before love became a transaction. The wild self does not please, it pulses. It moves with instinct, with primal knowing, with the rhythm of life itself. It feels deeply but is not governed by the wounds of others. It does not wait for permission to exist. It simply is vast, alive, uncontained. To awaken this part of yourself is to remember who you were before you were told who to be. But to reach it, you must walk through the labyrinth of emotional inheritance. You must dare to ask, who taught me that love must be earned? Whose approval did I beg for as a child? Who benefited from my silence, my compliance, my false light? These are not just questions of psychology. They are mythic inquiries, doorways into the soul. For when you confront them, you are not only healing your personal story, you are dismantling generations of psychic conditioning. You are breaking an ancient spell that told the sensitive, the intuitive, and especially the feminine, that their worth depends on how much of themselves they can give away. This awakening is not merely personal, it is revolutionary. It marks the end of niceness as survival. Because niceness, more often than not, is performance, a mask of compliance disguised as virtue, silence dressed up as peace. The world does not need more nice people. It needs fierce empathy, empathy rooted in truth, empathy that includes the self, the kind that says, I feel you, but I will not abandon me. This shift is seismic. When the empath stops pleasing and starts living in alignment with truth, they become a mirror, no longer reflecting others' projections but revealing their shadows. Your refusal to self-abandon will expose another's tendency to manipulate. Your boundaries will awaken their buried guilt. Your clarity will unearth their chaos. And many will withdraw, not because you are wrong, but because they are unprepared to meet themselves in your reflection. Yet the ones who remain, those are your true companions. They will not just take, they will see you. They will meet you in wholeness, not hunger. They will honor what you give because they also honor what you keep. Relationships once built on imbalance will either evolve or dissolve. This is not a tragedy. This is truth sorting itself. The ones who love you will adapt. The ones who only needed you will drift away. And in the quiet aftermath, something extraordinary happens. You begin to hear the frequency of your soul, no longer drowned by the static of others' needs, no longer distorted by their expectations. Just you, your breath, your essence, your desire. This is what it means to truly see. You no longer mistake attachment for love. You no longer confuse intensity for connection. You recognize dependence disguised as devotion, manipulation masked as care. You see it in the eyes, in the energy, in the silence. You have become the one who sees. And this awakening expands far beyond the personal realm. When the empath stops pleasing, they do not simply heal themselves, they become a vessel for collective healing. Their energy transforms from self-sacrifice to sacred service. Because now, when they give, it is no longer from emptiness, but from wholeness. When they help, it is not from fear, but from freedom. When they serve, it is not to be loved, but because they are love itself. This is a sacred offering, and it carries immense power. The aura shifts, growing luminous yet grounded. You no longer magnetize the wounded who seek to drain your light. Instead, you attract those who carry their own radiance, those who meet your eye to eye, soul to soul. The frequency of your life begins to rise, not through striving or effort, but through release, through shedding everything that was never truly yours. You lose the approval of many, yet in its place, you gain something far more precious, the truth of yourself. Now you begin to understand why this path is not for the faint of heart, why so many empaths remain trapped in the cycle of pleasing. To break free, you must confront everything you once believed love to be. You must face the ache of being misunderstood, the sting of rejection, and the sacred solitude that follows. But it is within that solitude that the soul begins to bloom. You were never meant to be everyone's soothing balm. You were meant to become your own medicine. And from that healed wholeness, you radiate a light that reminds others of their own, without saving them, without fixing them, but simply by being so fully yourself that your authenticity becomes a mirror of truth. This is evolution. This is you remembering what it means to embody your essence. The path from here is not upward toward achievement, but inward and downward, into the fertile dark, where truth is not a concept, but a lived experience. You are no longer here to be liked. You are here to be real. And yes, this terrifies the part of you still addicted to being chosen. Let us name it honestly. People-pleasing is not merely a personality trait. It is an addiction to validation, a psychic compulsion to merge, to fix, to soften every rough edge of conflict. Not because you are purely kind, but because you are afraid. Afraid that without your usefulness, you will not be loved. Afraid that without constant performance, you will be forgotten. This is the wound of abandonment, disguised in the costume of kindness. But beneath that costume stirs something ancient and wild, the deeper self that no longer begs to belong, because it already knows it does, not to others, but to existence itself. You were not born to complete anyone's unfinished emotional story. You were not created to be an extension of someone else's pain. You are a sovereign psyche, a unique configuration of archetypal intelligence, and your life belongs to you. The moment you realize this, not as an idea, but as a felt truth in your body, is the moment you reclaim your psychic throne, and finally, you sit in it as the ruler of your own energy, your own destiny, your own soul. When the empath finally sits upon their own throne, the entire rhythm of their life begins to shift. No longer do they orbit around the gravity of others' needs. Others begin to move within the quiet pull of their authenticity, not through manipulation, but through resonance. When you stop leaking energy through unconscious giving, it gathers inside you, dense, radiant, magnetic. You do not need to speak louder. Your presence itself becomes language. This is not the power of control, but the power of alignment, the sacred harmony between your inner and outer worlds. Here begins what the mystics called the inner marriage, the union of your masculine and feminine energies, the balance between doing and being, giving and receiving. You are no longer divided or searching for your missing half in others. You have started the holy work of integration, and with integration comes vision. You begin to see through the subtle manipulations that once captured your compassion, the guilt disguised as love, the neediness masquerading as care, the covert contracts hidden in connection. You no longer take them personally, you understand them. You remember when you, too, gave away truth in exchange for belonging? Now, you do not judge. You simply do not participate. This clarity births your deepest liberation, the realization that healing others was never your duty. It was once your identity, your survival pattern, your escape from the fear of being forgotten. But it was never your destiny. You were not created to be consumed. You were created to be conscious. Through your awareness, others may awaken, but that is their path, not your burden. As this truth roots itself in your being, your energy stops spilling outward in endless overextension and flows inward like water returning to its sacred well. For the first time, you feel full, not from praise, but from presence. From that fullness, creativity returns. You write, you sing, you paint, you live. Your soul, once silenced by obligation, begins to speak again. And in that wholeness, you become a quiet beacon. You attract not through performance, but through vibration. The right people recognize you by the peace they feel in your presence. What no longer aligns fades naturally, and what is real begins to bloom. This is not loss, it is purification. You are no longer the sponge or the savior, but the sovereign. The empath who stops pleasing and starts seeing does not lose their light. They learn to direct it. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose yourself, to love without losing yourself, to live as truth itself. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.